and welcome to the Open Era Podcast. My name is Devang and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bush. Oh, Bush, good to talk to you again. Sorry we missed you all last week. I had a freak back injury that, let me tell you, wow, Simon, at my age, at my advancing age, recovering from these things is getting so much harder.
Would you like to share with our audience how this occurred? Do you feel like this is a safe enough space for you to do so?
I'm a cyclist. I know I took a lot of heat for being honest about a car purchase that we made. So I just want to put it out there that I also ride my bike a lot. But I was riding my bike somewhere and it was all uphill and I had all of my work stuff with me. So I got there and I felt something kind of off, but I sat down and then went on with my day. That day was fine. And then the next day it really seized up out of nowhere and I was not able to walk. So yeah, it was brutal. And I laugh now. I know I'm not an athlete or a pro athlete at all, but the way that some of these guys can play through the pain, quote unquote, it's insane. It's insane because wow. Yeah. So here we are now. I'm better, but yeah.
What a great advertisement for performance enhancing drugs within sport.
Listen,
cycling's hard.
Those Aussie guys, whoever those guys are behind the doped up games, they're onto something here because there's only so much physio can do before your IT band wants to snap. But I think I've spent long enough talking about my broken ass body. Bush, how you doing?
Doing well, not too bad. I'm now back from being in Ontario, full-time back in Vancouver again, and was enjoying some beautiful sunshine, some beautiful spring sunshine. It's one of the nice seasons here in British Columbia, so I'm enjoying this week. Enjoyed last week as well. There was a decent amount of tennis on, wasn't there, considering where we are in the calendar? Yeah. It was nice to get back to watching some clay court tennis and excited to dive into it this week.
Right before that, did you see the eclipse in Ontario? Then you did, right? Yeah.
I did. I did not get a full eclipse. I got a 98%er or whatever the hell it was when I was a little further north.
Still pretty good.
I'm glad I wasn't part of the group of people that headed down to, oh God, what is that part of the world called?
Niagara
yeah.
Falls.
There was another city, right, that was full of people. Kingston, is that right? Kingston was full
Hamilton?
of Sure, yeah. That sounds like another city.
Yeah.
Are these parts of Toronto? I don't know anything about them.
No, they're not. Wow. Okay. First of all, open up a book once in a while. Second of all, no, they're not. They're not. It'd be like calling, I guess, Surrey, a part of Vancouver, if that makes sense.
We can't have that, can we?
Actually, no, they're even farther. In any case, that's an outrageous comment. I'm glad you got to see it. There was cloud cover where we were. We were thinking about going to Hamilton, but yeah, I felt like in the end, it was just cool to see it happen, but not to get incredibly sidetracked. I don't know how I thought of the eclipse there, but anyways, maybe it's because I'm thinking about Casper Ruud, Bush, because we last spoke.
Perfect transition.
About Monte Carlo and Stefano Tsitsipas cementing his claim to the home title, his home tournament. And we got a repeat in Barcelona, and I thought we needed some sort of flipping to make this watchable in a sense that I think we're going to see this matchup quite a few times in the next few weeks, Bush, but it was good to see Casper turn one on Steph.
My man finally got to jump in the swimming pool in the Barcelona final. He got to realize his career dream. One of them got the monkey off the back at this level of, what would we call it? Level of tour event? Number tour event? I don't know what you'd call
500,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What on earth would you call that?
Silver. The silver level.
So sure, let's go with that.
That's how they used the decals. Remember? The ATP decals? They used to be coded.
They were, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. That seems like a long time ago at this point. Jesus, COVID has aged me significantly. This final was close for about an hour and then really wasn't past the early point of the second set. I feel like we're going to see this a lot through the clay court season. I know you mentioned that off the top, but these two players are just so good on this surface. They're going to run into each other on the basis of finding the back end of tournaments so much. I thought Ruud played really well. Steph looked a little tired, and I know he fought a little bit during that second set, but it didn't look like he was altogether there at the back end of that second set. Fair enough. It's a lot of matches in a short space of time, but Ruud was gave a good account of himself and deserved to win this tournament. He had a really good week in general. And I know we said the last time we spoke, I was sort of in jest saying that this could be a French Open final. Could it though?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely with the way things are tracking. I mean, there's a few wild cards in there, but yeah, I think we could see it for sure. It's really weird, like talking about Casper when we're like, this is his biggest title, and he's been in Slam finals 3 times, right? It's like, I think it has been a bit strange the way we discuss him. I know I have not been that charitable when discussing Casper Ruud, which I blame Breakpoint for mostly, but I think this kind of arc is seldom seen, where it's like someone who has made it deep into the biggest tournaments is on a name recognition basis with I think the majority of tennis fans or even casual tennis fans. I think he's recognized, and yet a 500 level event in Barcelona is his biggest title so far. Maybe this needed to happen first before he can break through at the truly big ones, because I do think that Novak win last week, even though he didn't win the title, that is huge. That is bigger than I think making a final or saying you were a Slam finalist. I think mentally he's changed a bit.
I agree with you. I think that was a massive win for the overall psyche, his mental makeup going into the bigger events per se. I don't know. Monte Carlo is a pretty big event, but especially going into Paris. I wonder whether or not, because I was thinking about this during this final. Maybe this is an interesting question to ask, is that how little we think potentially of him despite being in 2 Slam finals. Do you think out of the top 10, if he played even on a clay court, who do you back him in a Grand Slam final against out of the top 10? Because I looked down the list and was like, I think I might take the entire top 10 over him in a Grand Slam final, even on a clay court, which I think maybe speaks to how little faith I have in him on the biggest stage.
I don't know. Okay, wait. Let's go through
I don't know,
this.
Dude. Like,
let's go through. Wait, so okay, Novak, no. I still tip it to Novak. Sinner, still tip it to Sinner. Mm-hmm. Alcaraz, I'd go with Alcaraz. I think we're on agreement so far.
Absolutely, yeah.
Medvedev, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know where Daniil's at. I think I could see it. I could see it with Zverev too.
Zverev, definitely. You could easily see a scenario where Ruud in 5 horrendous sets overcomes.
Yeah, and I think Steph might even still be like in that, I don't know yet. But after that, Rublev, Hurkacz, Dimitrov. You're telling me he can't beat these guys in a Slam final?
I would only have him over Hubie Hurkacz in a final.
That's
on a clay court.
Oh, God. Okay. Ruud Rublev would be a hilarious Slam final. We deserve that.
Someone has to win.
Before they really destroy the sport with whatever they're doing next, which we'll talk about in party shots. But
we really should do an episode at some point, which is the all Bant final. I don't know. What is the ultimate?
I thought I was down on Casper. This is shocking. I respect it though, because you're saying this when he's on the highest of highs. So I can't claim that you're saying this when he's down. But these are strong words, Simon.
This sounds awful to directly shit on a guy after his biggest title win. But I was thinking this during the final. Again, looking back at that top 10 list, does he have the ugliest game in the top 10? Like, he's just... It's all like legs and arms. It's all very stiff. It doesn't look particularly graceful or elegant. It's incredibly effective, don't get me wrong. But like, just from an aesthetic point of view, he's not a particularly nice player to watch. He's not particularly easy on the eye. Do you think there's anyone worse than him from that capacity? Sorry, by the way. Like, if you're a fan of Casper Ruud, don't listen to this part.
I'm assuming the experiment is not included in any of these conversations, correct? Because like we have him in there, but Medvedev has his haters for sure.
That's
right?
true.
So I think some people might say Med. I see what you mean. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. Like, I think his movement is worth the price of a ticket. I think it's something that he has gotten better at as well. And I think just in general, I like there is shades of a pusher sometimes that I abhor, but I feel like especially in the last few weeks, his level of aggression has made him far more watchable than I used to find. And I think that's what's changed with me as well in terms of having a fun time watching him play.
Fair.
Leave Casper there for a sec. I wanted to touch on some of the other ATP stuff. Jan-Lennard Struff, Bush, breaking through himself in Munich, preventing a Zverev title win, which is always nice, but not exactly a weak field here at all. And I do love when guys like Struff get over the line in ways like this. I mean, especially at home, but you want to talk it meaning something and meaning a lot to a journeyman at this point, which is shocking to say, but he's 33. I didn't realize that, Simon, that he was that old, but I love seeing stuff like this.
Yeah, home tournament, which you mentioned, getting over the hump finally on a clay court of all things.
Yeah.
This was really one for fans of big men move surprisingly well, big man, good touch, whichever you want to throw, which cliche you want to throw at this one. I really enjoyed this final, I've got to say. It did not have a level of orthodoxy in terms of how you would approach this surface and in terms of some of the shots that you saw on this. In fact, some of this was quite bad. It was quite bad.
I think it was like 4 degrees. I think friend of the show and Patreon subscriber Torquette was saying it was incredibly cold in Munich last week.
So one of the points I wanted to make about this final as well is, would you accept all season clay court tennis, like that players had to play? Would it make the surface more attractive to you if the players had to play in pissing rain? Because you can do it. It does make the court very heavy. I'd be so down to watch that. I think it would be hilarious to watch professional tennis players try and do it.
Same. Get an orange ball, play in snow. Hell, I don't give a damn. I think honestly, yeah. No, I've been clay pilled, man. It didn't look very comfortable for anyone playing. I watched a lot of Felix. I watched the Felix Struff match. And for Felix, I mean, a couple wins, which is always nice. But like, wow, we're talking about the expectations for him. I don't know if we want to get into that, but yeah, I was watching him against Struff, and I was like, wow, this looks really cold. But B, it didn't seem like a typical clay court match, and I guess that's also why this early on, like as we get into Madrid, what do we really know? Like, I think Casper and Steph have proved themselves to be definite contenders, but like I think we're still seeing some strange stuff that I don't know whether or not that's going to translate really. But I love that for Struff. Also shouts to Yuki Bambri and Albano Olivetti for winning the doubles. They beat Struff there, denying him the double, but it's a big win for India's Yuki Bambri. I love to see that doubles tradition carry on. And I got to be straight up with you, Bush. I have never seen Mariano Navone play before this week, but he was the person that Martin Fucsovics took down in Bucharest. Are you familiar with Navone's game?
Of course, Dev. I watch every single tennis match through the course of the season, especially at the prestigious Romanian Open in Bucharest.
People are going to yell at us because he lost to Baez in a final a few weeks ago in Rio. But honestly, yeah, give me a break. That's the ATP. On the WTA side, Bush, some interesting stuff. You had 2 different tournaments going on, the 500, the bigger event in Stuttgart, the famed Porsche Open, the car tournament, as we love to call it.
The Brampton Open.
But the Brampton.
The Rally Open. What else can we say? Rad Power.
Excellent lineup, though. A lot of heavy hitters here, Bush. And we got Swiatek Rybakina again, which is always blockbuster. Elena Rybakina. Is she what's the term? Is she a flat track bully? Is she a WTA 500 merchant, as they say?
She's the opposite of Casper Ruud, is she not, in terms of this level of event? She was full value for this win as well. Not like Swiatek really played badly or anything. It's just a bad matchup for the world number one. I mean, there's a lot to unpack about this. This semi-final lasted an extremely long time as well. I think they were out on court for nearly 3 hours. I think when we visit year-end lists on things, a lot of people are going to forget this semi-final. I thought this was really good. I thought this is one of the best matches of the year so far in terms of the ball striking, problem solving on both sides, storylines as well, of course, when you have 2 players who know each other so well and a world number one who's honestly struggling to overcome the problems that the Kazakhs throwing against her. like I thought it was great. I really enjoyed this one. I was surprised that people were down on it because I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I think it was better than the Qatar final in Doha in February for sure. Even though they had a very good tiebreak or a fun tiebreak in that one. No, I agree with you as well, and I do like how this is confirmed to me as well. And like I can't remember where I saw this. I blame social media for this, but I saw a remark about, this might have been our Patreon actually. I saw a remark about like what the super tours are going to mean, and like, do we really want to see certain matchups all the time, like kind of force fed to us if we have like a closed off tour with only a certain amount of players? And I don't, and we'll get onto that in parting shots. But on the WTA, if you did have the top 3 or 4 players playing each other more, God, that'd be great. Because for more often than not, they truly do deliver.
Well, it's interesting. This is against the backdrop of both the NBA and NHL playoffs happening at the same time. We're in that period of time where we're seeing repeated matchups of the same teams playing each other over and over again. And it's a quirk, I think, of US sports that doesn't exist in the football world, doesn't really exist in other European sports. Scratch his chin. I don't think there are. Like, this long series idea is
Test cricket.
Yeah, I mean, Test cricket's, I think, a good example of it. But I'm not a huge fan of it, I've got to say. I understand why people kind of lean into that side of things and enjoy the idea that you're seeing, those mini matchups inside of series and problem solving, the chess match element to it. But I kind of like a bit of variety, especially when we're in knockout stages or at the back end of tournaments or akin to something like that. So it doesn't do a lot for me, which is perhaps why I'm reacting negatively to the idea of potentially seeing Elena Rybakina versus Iga Swiatek 19 times in a year. But yeah, if that's where you want to go, then let's do that.
We'll get into that a bit more because I think, I have some thoughts as well. I wanted to shout out Sloane Stephens, Bush winning in France, beating Magda Linette. I gotta stop making that joke. I know we got a lot of fans in Poland as well, so I shouts to Magda Linette. I will stop doing.
You almost did it again.
I know. Shouts to Sloane, man. I didn't see that much of this tournament, truth be told, but I did watch some highlights of the final, and like, I have a lot of respect for people like Sloane, pros who have like found the tour at their own pace after doing like the full on boot camp of like the first 3 or 4 years where you're chewed up and spit out. Like we're seeing some stars currently go through. I like how Sloane has like found tennis again on her own terms. And it seems like she's fully embraced that like style of committing herself to the sport, in which it's not necessarily about tennis only, and she can still win. I think I'm reading a lot from just watching her, but that's the vibe I'm getting seeing her play now, and it seems very freeing.
Yeah, I agree with you. She's still a really good player, and I think we tend to forget how good of a clay court player that she is because of the pinnacle of her career, of course, coming on hard courts in the US Open and winning that solitary US Open final. But she's been to a clay court final of the French Open as well. I think it's her best tournament by a considerable margin in terms of how many matches she's won there overall. And I think it's up there, and I mean it is her best surface. So I mean, I don't think we're gonna see her doing things again at the back end. Who knows though, right? Like she's a really good player on that surface. So let's see what happens through the course of this. And this will give her a ton of confidence as well, like in terms of the caliber of players that she beat this week. I don't know. Watch this space on her because she is good on the surface.
Definitely don't want to see her at the French Open, right? In your draw, if you're one of the big players. Because I think that's, someone who's been around the block. I think she's up to 34, in the world. So big win for Sloane. We'll take a break now. When we come back on Parting Shots, we're going to talk about plans for tennis's revamped future, a Russel Fuller article in the BBC. We'll dig into that. Plus some news and notes, including the retirement of Garbiñe Muguruza and plenty more coming up on Open Era.
Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. Devang, it's time for parting shots. Despite that should be the start of every single parting shot.
Dude, that was actually a cry for help because of the pain I'm feeling. But no, I am excited.
Like the kid winning the spelling bee and the party poopers going off all around his head. You mentioned the Russel Fuller article, good friend of the show, Rusty. Within this article, it talked about the potential revamped future and how the governing bodies all have to align and what, in general, the future of tennis could look like. This, of course, is against the backdrop of Saudi Arabia in terms of their influence on the tour. The article is specifically dealing with where this supposed 10th Masters event could end up in the calendar and the sort of political ramifications within tennis around that. Dev, one question that did strike me on this. When do you think this is going to start happening? Like, when do you think we're actually going to start seeing some movement on this side of things? Because obviously no smoke without fire. This has been on the cards for at least a year since we started hearing the rumblings of it. But to actually get some progress on this and start seeing a revamped tour or like, what do they call it? I don't know what the actual language they use. There's some bollocks term to decide. Premium tour, that's the word. Geez, everything in the world is premium at the moment. Premium forks, premium knives. When do you think this is going to start happening?
Great question. I don't know. The one thing I don't really know is how the players would vote on something like this, because I have a couple of thoughts. Like, I think the idea of keeping people locked in on the contender tour or like the sub tour or where the people are contending, like, I think it's not impossible and you can do it. But I also think of like the European Golf Tour or the whatever the heck, the DP Golf Tour now, I think it's called, or something, or other kind of examples of like the B Tour and how they're covered and their level of exposure. And I can't pretend and say it's currently good, but I don't necessarily see a world in which this is done in a way that like we are shining these lights on the idea of what makes tennis amazing, which is, I think, as one of the tournament owners says in this article, proximity and diversity is what makes the sport so special. And it changes a bit when you try and structure things around this idea of a premium tour. And I also think that Drive to Survive and all of what happened with F1 was the worst thing that could have happened to tennis, because I do feel like they are really trying to do the F1ification of tennis. And it does feel like pooling things into a more exclusive group of players and choosing more select venues and doing all the things that F1 does seems to be the plan now. And it's just not the same at all. Like, it's just totally different. And I'm glad in this article they get into the aspect of all of these contractors, these thousands of players. What the hell are they going to vote on? Who is voting on it? Who is deciding? So yeah, I think people are seeing one model that's quote unquote working because those Drive to Survive numbers were huge. And like, I mean, I don't admit to know the accounting for Formula One at the moment, but how much is it working, Simon? Like, how much is it sustainable? How much is it really doing well and not just one of these growth at all costs kind of things that ends up flaming out in a bit? Like, I understand change needs to happen, but I'm with you on this. I don't see it starting that soon or as soon as it seems in these articles.
A lot of rich boomers do like F1. It has to be said, if you look at who their audience are. So,
but people like Mercedes and Ferrari and brands, like, I think for tennis, these are all plans that makes, like, the way they're talking about it is as if Fed and Nadal and these guys are still going. Like, I think you said this on the Discord. Who the hell wants to watch Zverev and Tsitsipas play 20 times a year?
It's true. Yeah.
I guess there are people. But I don't know.
There's you remember when we're working together and in the marketing world, there's so much fluff around everything that you make. And the thing that always I used to appreciate about some of the people that we work with, it was kind of cutting to the core of like, so what actually is the thing that we're selling? So you cut everything away and say, okay, no words around it. Just tell me very straight what exactly we are dealing with here. And then when you arrive at the reality that you are seeing Alexander Zverev against Karen Khachanov 8 times a season, and that might be at the latter stages of tournament, with all due respect to that matchup, I don't think that's pulling up any trees, Dev. And I think oftentimes when we get into these situations and you have people in boardrooms making these decisions, they think it is going to be Jannik Sinner versus Carlos Alcaraz in every final. That's not how it works in tennis.
No.
It just isn't. You're not getting Iga Swiatek versus Elena Rybakina in every final. It's just not how it works. But that is how it works in F1. You are getting the same people in every single race that you're in. That is a marketable thing that doesn't exist in tennis in the same way. This is fraught with problems. This is fraught with disaster, I think. Also, I think there's an element to this which is going to sound ridiculous as I say it coming out of my mouth, but stay with me. I think there's a real danger here that the Saudi Arabia stuff might completely blow up in a bunch of sports faces, given how much money has been blown by the PIF already. And if you look at how much money's been burnt and how much the return on things are, they're kind of fucked, Dev. Like, if people actually start getting a wind of that these projects have basically been...
the 100-mile city that's now 1.6 kilometers?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's just the latest example of this sort of stuff, right? Where it's obviously a complete vanity project. What happens when your PIF is no longer worth 500 billion, but is worth 3 instead? Which, is feasible. This stuff could actually happen if the oil, especially the price of oil, continues to do what it's doing as well. Like this, I'd be really hesitant on this one.
Put it this way: whenever this does happen, I don't know if I'll be following tennis the same. I doubt it.
I think there's a very legitimate question to ask: if this is what tennis becomes, what does your fanship of the sport look like?
Yeah.
Because this looks shit to me.
Stay tuned. I'm sure we'll talk about this more. Okay, more parting shots. Big shout outs to Garbiñe Muguruza announcing her retirement from tennis at the age of 30. 2 slam titles, 2 other finals. Ranked number 1 for 4 weeks in 2017. She won the 2021 WTA finals. Just, I don't know, elegantly cool is the first 2 words that came to my mind when I thought of Garbiñe Muguruza Busch. And to go down as the second most accomplished Spanish tennis player behind Arantxa Sanchez Vicario is no small feat. So big congrats to Garbiñe.
Can we do the thing that happens on so much of like North American sports coverage? Let me ask you the question, Dev.
She a Hall of Fame?
She a Hall of Fame? Yes, you knew exactly where I was going. That's really funny.
I think you might get into the Tennis Hall of Fame. I think you got a shot with the way you're tracking. It doesn't seem like they have... it's not Cooperstown. In the one way I think tennis is not terribly compromised by old people is that it's not like they refuse to let other people into their Hall of Fame. I could be wrong, but I did see. Okay, wait. Let's see who got in 2003. Okay, so here we go. Recently, Bush, in 2021, Rusty, Leighton Hewitt got in. Ivan Isevich got in 2020. Okay, she's getting in for sure. Surefire Hall of Famer. I think a 1 slam gets you in, to be honest. So for 2 and to be number 1 in the world, plus a WTA finals title, I think so.
Hello and welcome to the Open Era podcast. I'm joined by my co-host and tennis Hall of Famer, Simon Bushell.
God willing, we'll make this happen. Any thoughts on Muguruza, Bush?
I think you summarized it really nicely. A great career. Really, genuinely, a great career to end up award number 1, to win the titles that she did, to win the tour finals, a class act, a really great player as well. Someone that's, I think eloquent's a really a good way of saying it in terms of describing her game as well. Like, not just someone that was possessed with incredible power just because of her stature and her frame. I think she was more than that in general. And testament to the fact that her slams were on grass and on clay. Just a really, really good player and a good ambassador for the sport as well. I'm glad that she's able to rest her weary body, although it is quite sad. I mean, she's only 30. That's the sad part about tennis, is that it comes for everyone, which is not great.
Well said. Speaking of, someone who is on their retirement tour currently.
It's true. Talking about Danielle Collins, she was interviewed during the course of the week on a podcast. I won't say the name because it was the kind of
when I saw this, I was like, is Bush going to say what podcast he was on?
I haven't quite ever gone down the road. It depends if I'm enjoying, like sometimes I've said this to you before, right? I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. Sometimes I read LinkedIn if I'm feeling down about the world because it makes me, I find it really funny. And sometimes maybe I should start listening to like entrepreneur podcasts as well, just to be like, wow, I'm so happy that I'm not in this world. I'm really far away from it. Anyway, all that being said, Danielle Collins is being interviewed on a thought leader podcast about just her career in general. And she was talking primarily about women's sports. And I thought she spoke really well on this, when all joking aside, about how that she doesn't watch a whole lot of men's sport. Like primarily her focus is on watching women's sport. And like shout out to that, not just like that discipline, but in general, women's sport over the last few years has been phenomenal in terms of some of the growth that we've seen from it, not least against the backdrop of obviously Caitlin Clark's exploits in the NCAA tournament. We've recently seen all-time viewing figures of the WNBA draft, all-time highs in terms of number of viewers. The NCAA tournament final also doing better numbers on the women's side than the men's. Obviously, a lot of this is in relation to Caitlin Clark, but we've also seen volleyball having incredible growth in the women's side of things. Football as well, obviously seeing the highest gate receipts ever on both the Women's Premier League and that side of things as well, which is really cool to see. So just in general, Dev, positive movement on this front. And who would have thought that women might watch women's sport? Shocking that might be a thing.
Yeah. Did you, I know, major apologies to our listeners who hate the NFL, but Bush and I are sickos in that regard, especially about the NFL draft. Did you see Cooper DeJean, who's like an Iowa safety, was interviewed, and he was asked what NFL teams were asking him, and one of the questions teams were asking him was if he could beat Caitlin Clark in a one-on-one. And obviously he's like I don't know how old, he's like 21, 22, but like obviously he's a jock kid. He's like, yeah, I think I could beat him, Peter, like I'm a pretty good athlete, it's like whatever, and he's getting roasted for it. But what absolute meathead Neanderthal like goons NFL teams are to be like, hey, let's ask this kid if he thinks he could beat a girl, because then we could gauge his mentality and his toughness. You know, I feel like asking the question itself is just such a NFL meathead thing to do.
I agree with you. Don't blame the 21-year-old kid. Like he's
exactly.
You'd like to think that he does better and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, he's 21. Yeah. Like think back to how dumb you were at the age of 21 as well. We should also probably take this opportunity to recognize that we also did roast Holger Rune and continue to do so, despite him being 20 years of age.
Yeah, 100%. You got bageled. No, I'm joking. Okay. You got bageled this week. This was upsetting. I didn't know Leylah Fernandez is a City fan?
Supposedly so, yeah. So this came up on her Instagram. She was upset at seeing the choke job that was.
I mean, what?
Is that fair?
God, I hope so. I hope so.
You know,
it keeps getting worse for her.
We were talking midweek about like I don't watch a whole lot of football outside of watching Leeds play, and I think just the way that I watch so much sport, but it's always around just like my teams or particular athletes. And I was watching, so I did watch the Manchester City versus Real Madrid game. And all the way through that, I was just thinking to myself, like, who really likes this stuff? It's boring.
They're too good.
They're too good, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have anything to say about Leylah Fernandez losing? Or like,
it's upsetting. It's upsetting. I didn't know Leylah was a Man City fan, and I hope there's more pain in that department coming soon, God willing. Yannick Sitter at Financial Times, Bush. I'll admit I shuddered when I saw this headline, but this is their like hip offshoot magazine.
Can anything in relation to the Financial Times be considered cool?
I don't know. What is this HTSI magazine?
On this podcast previously, I've told the point, or made the point that I only read the news on Sunday. I will admit, one of the outlets that I do read is the Financial Times. Maybe this is a sign that I'm mid-30s at this point. But they can't get away with lying to you, right? Because they have to at least kind of tell the truth. Kind of, do they?
Because these are the Financial Times. No, it's true. I think that's fair. That's fair. I didn't read this article, though. Was it any good?
No, it was terrible. But I think one of the things I was going to say about it is we made the point a few weeks ago about how marketable Yannick Sinner is and how just he's the perfect vehicle for all of the Fed money to make that transition straight into Yannick Sinner's pocket.
You know, those burrito pasta folks are putting a lot of spaghetti in that pot, if you know what I mean.
They got in early on this train, didn't they? They promised all the meatballs possible without getting into double entendre here. One of the things that I just wanted to raise about this point, so yeah, obviously like the Fed money directly transfers into Yannick Sinner's pocket. But he is kind of the perfect ambassador for this stuff, isn't he? Just very neutral, nice kid, is like looks good in a suit.
Likes to ski.
Skis, yeah. Does all of the rich things, wears a Rolex. Just completely malleable.
Parents aren't jerks. Mm-hmm. His parents are somehow normal tennis people in a sea of insanity.
All you just need to do is get him talking about index funds and, business thought leaders and everything. And he's perfect for that stuff. I don't know if that's... I'd love to know who he actually is. I'd love to like have a beer with Yannick Sinner and figure out whether or not he is this under the surface. But by God, some of these brands have really attached themselves to him.
That will be interesting because I think we grew up at the same time-ish as those other guys. Whereas like for Alcaraz and Sinner and Holger Rune, like we'll get a chance to like see what changes in 10 years about them. Which I don't know if we were looking at that really with Fed and Joker and Nadal. I think in hindsight we did, but it'll be easier maybe from this vantage point to see that kind of change. Because it does seem a bit beyond him at this point. Like he does seem still like a gawky teenager, but the brands are coming. Don't get me wrong, the brands are coming.
He does look good in an expensive sweater though, which is important.
It does. That's the Fed test.
Yep.
Toss spin 2K5 Bush. Tennis is back in the video game scene. They're doing a lot of marketing. I think Fed's in this game. He posted a strange looking screen grab of Alcaraz not looking so hot. Will you play this game?
No.
Not even once. You will not.
I will not, no. Should we do a live stream of it? Our first ever Twitch stream?
Honestly though, I would be down. I love virtual tennis. So I want to see. But yeah, I don't know. I'm willing. I'm willing to check it out. You heard that, Topspin 2K5. Hook us up with a copy and we'll review it. Hashtag influencing. Finally from me, Simon. Shouts to Belinda Bencic, who gave birth. Bencic, the mom. Truth be told, this kind of snuck under the radar. I know I am the chief member of the Belinda Bencic fan club, but shouts to Belinda and baby girl Bella, who are both doing well.
Bella Bencic.
I'm not sure.
What a name.
Bella Bencic. She's playing tennis, by the way. That's confirmed. Did you remember that she's defending Olympic gold medalist? Because I didn't till I read this story.
That's right.
She won't defend. Yeah. Probably not. She probably won't defend, barring a really quick comeback. But shouts to Belinda and her family. That's all I got, Bush. Anything else from you?
Not this week. I guess we should just give a quick shout out to Emma Raducanu. A couple of match wins in a row.
Yes.
Starting to look good. And actually gave a good account of herself against Iga Swiatek as well. We didn't cover it in the first segment, but good positive signs. Again, we should probably caveat this saying that she just got absolutely destroyed in Madrid and lost in
qualies. She looked really ragged though. I think she said she was gassed as well.
Fair enough at this point. But those match wins were good, and I thought there were positive signs moving forward, and I'm excited to see her continue the upward trajectory. Yeah.
Speaking of Madrid, Bush, I had this buried in the notes, and I just saw this now. But Rafa Nadal is in Madrid. He's scheduled to play against someone who I'm 80% sure is an AI figure. If you had to tell me, come up with an AI name, Darwin Blanche is probably it. But Darwin is 16, which is awesome for him. I saw the video of him reacting to the draw, which is awesome. Like, imagine that. But the press Rafa's doing before this, man, like we're recording this the day before he's supposed to play, but does not sound like he even really wants to play at the French Open at the moment because he knows he can't win. So it feels very odd, this whole thing. And I know it's totally up to him, etc. But I don't know. I don't know if you saw the press he did in Madrid, Bush.
I did see that. It sure as shit doesn't sound like he's playing in France, does it?
He's like, guys, come on. Let's be real here. I'm not going to the French Open. Like, it seems like what he's saying.
It's always bad when you're having your kid being transported around to you at all of these different tournaments. It's all right. You're going to watch him play one last time. I promise you, at one of these tournaments, it's going to happen. It doesn't seem to be happening so far. It's kind of... I kind of want to see him play at this point. We've had so much will he, won't he come back, and some of the matches that he has had, it was like, oh, cool, I got to see him one last time. Oh no, he's been destroyed by Alex de Minaur. I just kind of want to see like just one last run somewhere would be really cool, but I don't think it's happening.
I did think as well, like in Rafa's credit, like he was like, the world doesn't end with the French Open. Like I've done my thing there, like, but he has clear goals, and I think the Olympics are the big one. So let's see what happens there. Okay, 2 challenges remaining. Bush, what do you got this week?
The NFL draft. I wanted to, first off, I guess we should say, absolutely fuck the NFL, 100%. Like, no doubt at all about it. Yes, absolutely should mention that off the top. I'm not a huge fan of how the draft works in general, like the economics and all the things that go into it, the ethics of where these players never get a say in where they end up and all that kind of stuff. They're losing out on money. Tons of problems with it. However, it's a really good spectacle, and I think it does help the sport in general. And I really like it as a process because you get to learn more about who these kids are. It gets them put in a spotlight. It does help create stars. I think it really does. And I think this is a huge part of that, of getting to know the player inside and out before they're drafted, giving them their moment, and then bringing that energy to when they start to make their first appearances in the league. So yeah, everything removed from it, terrible. all things in consideration, a terrible thing. However, it is kind of cool and I kind of like it.
I think it's one of the first things I truly loved as a kid. Like, really loved following. I think it also because the Buffalo Bills were god awful when I was growing up. So like the draft was really all we had to look forward to because it was about the next big star, and no free agents wanted to sign in Buffalo. So we could only get them through the draft. So yeah, I'm totally with you. It's a horrible, horrible entity, and this shouldn't be happening. But also, God, I love the spectacle. That's a good one, Simon. I didn't really have a non-back related thought, but I would say a funny story about
icy hot
when I went to. Well, God, yeah, I know what Shaq was talking about when he was repping that brand. But I went to a physio place on the weekend. I was lucky to get an appointment, and it was nearby my house. But I got there and I buzzed in, and it took me a few tries, but finally someone buzzed in. It was a Sunday, so I expected it to be a bit slow. But I walk in the door, and it's 3 flights of stairs. And I'm like, what the, like, a physio place doesn't have an elevator? Like, that seems a bit insane. So I'm like struggling up the stairs, sweating, like really not well up there. Get to the room, get in there. I'm like, sit down. And the first thing I ask is, do you guys have an elevator? She's like, oh yeah, it was just down the street, the other entrance. It's one of those things where I laughed, but also it was like a final humiliation of being old and injured. It's not a banner week. Not a banner week at all.
I do like those moments that you periodically have, not you, like everyone, where you're like almost passive aggressively asking something to someone, and then they quickly retort you, and you realize that you're at fault, and it's always very funny.
Hey, don't you think it would be a good idea for a fucking physiotherapy place to have an elevator for their patients? Hey, do you think?
Yeah, it's just over there.
They did. They definitely did. Yeah, they have one. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the tennis in Madrid. I love this tournament. Got to go there a couple years ago. It was awesome. So watch along with us. Follow along with us by joining us on patreon.com/open era. If you join us there, you get the show ad free. You get it early on Sundays. Plus, you talk tennis with us all the time on our Discord. with our great friends over there. Yeah, a lot of tennis going on as clay season gets underway, so the best place to be is our Discord. And that's it for producer Dylan on the ones and twos. And for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next week.